The room smelled like old coffee and sadness. 12 folding chairs arranged in a circle, with tissues placed carefully on a small table in the center. This was where people came when life hit them too hard, when they needed to sit with strangers and share the weight of their hearts. Lisa sat in her usual spot, third chair from the window. She'd been coming here for 3 months now, ever since her little brother died in that car accident. The rain had been coming down hard that night, and the roads were slick. One moment he was texting her about picking up pizza for dinner. The next moment her phone was ringing with news that changed everything. She was a therapist herself. Someone who helped other people work through their problems every day. But when it came to her own pain, all that training felt useless. She could explain the stages of grief to her clients, could tell them about healthy coping methods. But she couldn't make her own chest stop feeling empty. Across the circle sat David, a quiet man who always arrived exactly 5 minutes early and left as soon as the session ended. He worked nights at the hospital, taking care of people in the emergency room. His wife had been sick for 2 years before she passed away from cancer. Lisa had watched him in these sessions, noticing how he sat with his shoulders tight, like he was always ready to jump up and help someone, even here. Tonight was different, though. The group leader, Mrs. Patterson, was talking about connection and healing. She kept saying things like, "We heal through reaching out and isolation makes grief harder." Lisa could see David shifting in his seat, looking uncomfortable. His jaw was set tight and his hands were gripped together. After the session ended, Lisa found herself walking toward the parking lot at the same time as David. Usually they just nodded at each other and went their separate ways. But tonight, she felt something pull her to speak. "Hard session tonight," she said, adjusting her purse strap. David looked up, surprised. "What?" "Yeah. All that talk about connecting with people?" Shook his head. "Sometimes I think being alone is easier." Lisa understood that feeling completely. "I'm a therapist," she said. "Spend all day telling people that relationships are important for healing, but honestly, sometimes I just want to lock my door and not talk to anyone." "You're a therapist?" David asked, his voice carrying a hint of interest for the first time since she'd known him. "Yeah. I work with people who've been through difficult things. Trauma, loss, that kind of stuff." Lisa paused. "Well, I'm not very good at following my own advice these days." They stood there for a moment, the parking lot quiet except for the sound of cars passing on the street. David seemed to be thinking about something. "I keep having these nights where I can't sleep," he said finally. "I'll be lying there and my mind just goes to all the times I couldn't help her. All the moments when I should have done something different." Lisa nodded. She knew that feeling well. That's normal after loss. Your brain is trying to process everything, trying to make sense of what happened, but it gets stuck in these loops. "There anything that actually helps?" David asked. "It's not the usual stuff people say, like time heals all wounds. Real help." Lisa thought about this carefully. In her practice, she'd seen what really worked and what didn't. "Physical comfort helps," she said. "When we're stressed or grieving, our bodies need to feel safe. That's why babies calm down when you hold them. It's not just emotional, it's biological. Like what kind of physical comfort? Simple things. Hugs, hand-holding, even just sitting close to someone. It releases hormones that help regulate stress. I call it survival behavior because, in a way, it is. We're wired to seek comfort from other people when we're hurting." David was quiet for a long moment. "I haven't really touched another person since she died," he said softly. "Not in any meaningful way. Handshakes at work, that's about it." Lisa felt something shift in her chest. She realized she was in the same situation. All those months of focusing on professional boundaries, of keeping her personal pain separate from her work life, had left her completely isolated. "Would you like to get coffee sometime?" she asked. "It's not as a therapy session or anything formal, just ... I don't know. Maybe we could talk about what actually helps instead of what we're supposed to do." David looked at her with something like relief in his eyes. "I'd like that." They met 3 days later at a small cafe downtown. Lisa arrived first and chose a corner table, somewhere quiet where they could talk without being overheard. When David walked in, she noticed he looked tired but more relaxed than she'd seen him in group. "Thanks for suggesting this," he said, sliding into the seat across from her. "I wasn't sure if you really meant it." "I meant it," Lisa said. I've been thinking about what you said, about not being able to sleep, about feeling stuck. I think I might have some ideas that could help. David ordered black coffee, and Lisa got tea. They sat there for a moment, both seeming to realize they were crossing some kind of line from group acquaintances to something more personal. Tell me about the sleep problems, Lisa said. What happens when you try to rest? I lie down, and my mind just starts racing. I think about all the nights I spent in the hospital with her, all the times I fell asleep in those uncomfortable chairs. Then I feel guilty for being in a comfortable bed when she's gone. Lisa nodded, understanding. That's survivor guilt. It's common, but it's also something we can work with. Work with how? Well, there are some techniques that help calm the nervous system, things that tell your body it's safe to rest. Lisa paused, considering how to explain this. The research shows that physical contact is one of the most effective ways to reduce stress hormones. When someone is holding you, or even just touching your arm, it signals to your brain that you're not alone, that you don't have to stay alert for danger. David looked interested but cautious. What kind of physical contact doesn't have to be complicated? Something as simple as someone placing their hand on your shoulder while you're trying to sleep can make a huge difference. Or lying next to someone, even without talking. The presence of another person helps regulate your nervous system. That sounds ... double quotes. David paused, thinking. That sounds like something I might want to try, but I wouldn't know who to ask. Lisa felt her heart beat a little faster. She was stepping into territory that felt both professional and personal at the same time. I could help you with that, she said. As part of understanding what works for grief recovery, we could try some basic comfort techniques and see if they help with your sleep. You'd do that? I think it would help both of us, Lisa said honestly. I've been having my own problems with feeling disconnected from people. Sometimes the best way to understand what works is to try it yourself. David was quiet for a long moment, considering. What would that look like? We could start simple. Maybe just sitting close together, or trying some basic relaxation techniques with physical comfort. Nothing complicated, just being present with each other in a way that helps both of us feel less alone. That sounds like it could really help, David said. When would we try this? Lisa felt something settle in her chest, a sense of purpose. She hadn't felt in months. We could start this week. It's maybe at my place, since it's quiet and private. We could set up a comfortable space and just see what happens. As they finished their coffee, Lisa felt like she was stepping into something new. She told herself this was about helping both of them heal, about trying techniques that could benefit her other clients too. But there was something else there. Something that felt like hope for the first time since her brother died. David walked her to her car, and when they said goodbye, he reached out and squeezed her hand briefly. Thank you, he said. For the first time in months, I feel like maybe I can actually get some rest. Lisa drove home with a sense of anticipation she hadn't felt in a long time. She was going to help David, and in helping him, maybe she could help herself too. It was just survival behavior, she told herself. Nothing more complicated than that. Lisa spent the next 3 days preparing her living room like she was setting up for a client session. She moved the coffee table to one side, arranged the couch cushions just right, and even bought a small timer from the store. Everything needed to be professional, controlled, and purposeful. When David arrived that Thursday evening, he looked nervous but hopeful. He'd been having another string of sleepless nights, and the dark circles under his eyes showed it. I wasn't sure what to expect, he said, looking around her living room. This feels different from our coffee meetings. I wanted to create a safe space, Lisa explained, gesturing to the couch. Somewhere comfortable, where we can try some basic comfort techniques. I've been reading more research about touch therapy and stress reduction. She had indeed been reading, staying up late, scrolling through medical journals and psychology papers. But what she didn't tell David was that she'd been thinking about this constantly, imagining what it would feel like to have another person close to her again. So how does this work? David asked, settling onto the couch, but keeping some distance. Between them, Lisa sat down beside him, her professional training kicking in. We start with simple contact. The research shows that even basic touch can reduce cortisol levels by up to 30%. I'm going to time our session for exactly 30 minutes, and we'll just focus on being present with each other. She showed him the timer. This helps maintain boundaries and keeps everything structured. We're not just sitting together randomly. We're conducting a therapeutic experiment. David nodded, though he still looked uncertain. What kind of contact are we talking about? We can start with you just resting your head on my shoulder, Lisa said. Or we can lie down next to each other, whatever feels most natural and comfortable. They started with David leaning against her shoulder while she sat upright on the couch. Lisa set the timer and tried to focus on the therapeutic aspects of what they were doing. She found herself noticing his breathing, how tense his shoulders were, the way he gradually relaxed as the minutes passed. This is actually really nice, David said quietly after about 10 minutes. I can feel my heart rate slowing down. Lisa felt it too. For the first time in months, her mind wasn't racing with thoughts about work or grief or what she should be doing differently. She was just present, focused on the warmth of another person and the simple act of providing comfort. When the timer went off, David didn't move immediately. Can we do a little longer? He asked. I feel like I might actually be able to sleep. Tonight, Lisa looked at the timer, then back at David. The research does suggest that longer sessions can be more effective, she said. We could try 45 minutes next time, but instead of stopping, she'll reset the timer for another 15 minutes. David settled back against her. Lisa found herself paying attention to things she hadn't noticed before, the way his hair smelled like hospital soap, how his breathing matched hers after a while, the weight of his head against her shoulder. When they finally separated, David looked more relaxed than she'd seen him since they met. That was amazing, he said. I actually feel calm. Like, really calm. Not just pretending to be calm. Lisa felt it too, though she tried to keep her response professional. The oxytocin release from physical contact is very powerful, she said. It's one of the body's natural ways of managing stress and trauma. Over the next 2 weeks, their sessions became a regular thing. David would come over every other evening, and they would spend their time together in what Lisa called therapeutic contact. She kept detailed notes about their experiences, tracking how long they spent together, what positions seemed most effective, and how both of them felt afterward. I think we should increase the frequency, Lisa said one evening as they were settling onto the couch. The research suggests that daily contact is more effective than every other day. David looked surprised. Daily? That's a lot of time together. It's not about the time, Lisa said quickly. It's about consistency. When you're trying to regulate a stressed nervous system, regular contact works better than sporadic sessions. Had been thinking about this constantly, actually. On the days when David didn't come over, she found herself feeling restless and unable to concentrate on her work. She told herself it was because she was breaking the routine of their therapeutic experiment, but deep down she knew it was something more. What would daily sessions look like? David asked. Same structure, same time limits. Maybe we could try different techniques too. I've been reading about progressive muscle relaxation combined with physical comfort. There is some breathing. Exercises that work better when you're close to another person. David agreed, and they started meeting every evening. Lisa began to structure her entire day around their sessions. She would finish her client appointments early, rush home to prepare the space, find herself checking the clock until David arrived. The sessions themselves were changing too. They started spending more time lying down together with Lisa, explaining that horizontal positions were more effective for full nervous system regulation. David would rest his head on her chest, and she would place her hand on his back, both of them breathing slowly and steadily. I can hear your heartbeat, David said one evening. It's really calming. Lisa felt something flutter in her chest that had nothing to do with therapeutic techniques. That's the goal, she said. When two people's heart rates synchronize, it creates a deeper sense of safety and connection. She had read about heart rate synchronization, but she was also discovering it firsthand. When David was lying close to her, she could feel her own stress melting away in a way that surprised her. She started looking forward to their sessions more than anything else in her day. I think this is really working, David said, after they'd been meeting daily for a week. I'm sleeping better than I have in months, and I don't feel so anxious during the day. Lisa felt proud of their progress. But she also felt something else, a growing need for these sessions that went beyond professional interest. She had started having trouble sleeping on weekends when David wasn't there, and she found herself thinking about their physical closeness throughout the day. The improvements are significant, she agreed. I think we should continue with daily sessions for now, maybe even extend them to an hour instead of 30 minutes. An hour? David looked thoughtful. That's a big time commitment. The research supports longer sessions for complex trauma, Lisa said, though she wasn't entirely sure that was true. We're both seeing benefits. From a therapeutic standpoint, it makes sense to continue with what's working. David nodded, trusting her professional judgment. Whatever you think is best, this has been the most helpful thing I've tried since everything happened. As he left that night, Lisa realized she was already planning the next evening's session. She told herself it was because she was seeing such positive results, both in David and in herself. But late that night, lying in bed alone, she had to admit that she was looking forward to their time together in a way that felt more personal than professional. She pushed the thought away and focused on the research. On the genuine help they were providing each other. It was survival behavior, she reminded herself. Nothing more complicated than that. But as she drifted off to sleep, she found herself counting the hours until David would be back on her couch, close enough to hear. Her heart beat again. 2 months into their daily sessions, Lisa's phone started buzzing with messages throughout the day. She would text David during his work breaks, asking how his stress levels were and whether he needed an extra session that evening. "How are you feeling this morning?" She'd text at 7 a.m. "Any anxiety today? Remember to use the breathing techniques we practiced?" Would come at lunchtime. "Let me know if you need to come over early. I'm free after 4 p.m. She'd send in the afternoon. David started noticing the pattern. At first, he thought it was sweet that Lisa cared so much about his progress. But lately, the messages felt more urgent, almost desperate. If he didn't respond quickly, she would send follow-up texts asking if everything was okay. "I think our sessions are really helping," Lisa said one evening as they settled onto the couch. "But I'm concerned about maintaining consistency. When you're 15 minutes late like today, it disrupts the therapeutic rhythm we've established." David looked at her with surprise. "I got held up at work. There was an emergency and I couldn't just leave." "I understand," Lisa said, though her voice carried a tension that hadn't been there before. "But your nervous system needs predictability. When our sessions are irregular, it can cause setbacks in your healing process." She had been pacing around her living room for those 15 minutes, checking her phone repeatedly and feeling a growing sense of panic. She told herself it was professional concern, but the truth was that she had been counting on their time together all day. Without it, she felt lost and anxious. "Maybe we should have a backup plan," Lisa suggested. "If you're going to be late, you could come over after your shift instead, even if it's midnight." David hesitated. "Lisa, that seems like a lot. I appreciate everything you're doing, but midnight sessions feel like they're crossing some kind of line." "What line?" Lisa asked, her voice getting defensive. "We're conducting therapeutic intervention. Trauma doesn't follow a 9-to-5 schedule." She had been researching more intensive therapy methods, looking for justification for what she was feeling. She found case studies about around-the-clock support for severe trauma patients, about the importance of constant availability during critical healing periods. She printed out articles and highlighted sections that supported her growing need to be available to David at all times. "I've been thinking," Lisa said the next evening, "about expanding our approach. I found research about something called intensive therapeutic contact. It's for people who've experienced significant loss." She showed David a folder full of printed articles, though she had carefully selected only the ones that supported her point of view. "Look at this study," she said, pointing to a highlighted paragraph. Patients who had daily contact with their support person showed 70% better outcomes than those with weekly sessions. David looked at the papers, trusting her expertise. What would intensive contact look like? Well, it could mean longer sessions, maybe 2 hours instead of 1, and more frequent check-ins during the day. Some of these studies suggest that text contact every few hours helps maintain the therapeutic connection. Lisa had been thinking about this constantly. She found herself unable to concentrate on her regular clients. Cutting their sessions short so she could prepare for David's arrival, she had started declining social invitations and canceling weekend plans. telling herself that David's treatment required her full attention. "That sounds pretty intense," David said carefully. "Are you sure that's necessary?" "David, you were barely sleeping 2 months ago. You were having panic attacks at work. Now look at you." Lisa's voice carried a certainty that made him doubt. His own concerns, this is clearly working. Why would we reduce something that's been so effective? David couldn't argue with the results. He was sleeping better, and his anxiety had decreased significantly. But he was also starting to feel like his entire life revolved around these sessions. He planned his work schedule around them, turned down invitations from friends, and found himself thinking about Lisa throughout the day. "I mentioned to a friend at work that I've been doing some kind of therapy," David said one evening. "He asked if I might want to grab dinner sometime, just to get out and socialize more." Lisa felt her chest tighten. "What did you tell him?" "I said I'd think about it. It might be nice to do something different for a change." "Different?" Lisa tried to keep her voice calm. "David, you're in a critical phase of your healing process. Introducing new social stressors right now could undo months of progress." She had been dreading this moment, when David might want to branch out and form other connections. She pulled out another article from her folder. "Look at this research about therapeutic disruption. When patients in intensive treatment start forming new relationships, it can trigger regression." David read the article, though something about it felt off. "This is about people in residential treatment facilities." "I'm not in a facility. The principles are the same," Lisa said quickly. "Your nervous system has learned to regulate through our sessions. If you start depending on other people for emotional support, it could confuse your healing process." Lisa had been having her own problems on days when David seemed less focused on their sessions. If he mentioned work friends or seemed distracted, she would feel a wave of anxiety that lasted for hours. She started planning activities that would keep David engaged with their therapeutic work, new breathing exercises, different positions for their physical contact, extended sessions that would take up more of his evening. "I think we should try overnight sessions," Lisa said one evening. "I've been reading about sleep therapy and co-regulation. When two people sleep in the same space, their nervous systems can synchronize more deeply." David looked surprised. "You mean like sleepovers?" "Not sleepovers," Lisa corrected. "It's therapeutic sleep support. It's a recognized treatment method for people with trauma-related insomnia." She had found exactly 2 articles about this approach, both from small studies with questionable methodology, but she had convinced herself that it was the next logical step in David's treatment. She was also desperately curious about what it would feel like to have him there all night, to not have to say goodbye and return to her empty apartment. "I don't know," David said. "That feels like a big step." "Think about it," Lisa said. "You sleep better after our sessions, right? Imagine how much more effective it would be if you didn't have to transition back to being alone. Your nervous system could stay regulated all night." David considered this. It was true that he slept best on the evenings when they had longer sessions. And Lisa's explanations always made sense. She was the professional, after all. "Maybe we could try it once," he said, "just to see if it helps." Lisa felt a surge of relief and excitement. "I think it could be really beneficial. We'll set it up like a regular session, just extended through the night." As David left that evening, Lisa was already planning how to arrange her bedroom for their overnight session. She told herself it was about maximizing the therapeutic benefits, about taking David's healing to the next level. But lying in bed that night, she realized she was looking forward to it more than she had looked forward to anything in months. She pushed away the nagging thought, and maybe she needed these sessions more than David did. This was about helping him, she reminded herself. It was about being a good therapist and providing the support he needed. But as she drifted off to sleep, she found herself counting the hours until she wouldn't have to sleep alone anymore. David's phone had been silent for 3 hours, and Lisa was losing her mind. She had sent for text messages asking about his stress levels, his evening plans, and whether he needed an early session. Nothing. Not even the little read notification that usually appeared within minutes. She told herself this was professional concern. David's treatment required consistent monitoring, and his lack of response indicated possible therapeutic regression. At least that's what she wrote in her notes as she paced around her apartment, checking her phone every few minutes. By 7 p.m., Lisa couldn't take it anymore. David was supposed to arrive at 8 for their regular session, but something felt wrong. She grabbed her keys and drove to his apartment complex, telling herself she was conducting a wellness check. It was standard procedure for intensive therapy. Cases, she reasoned. She knocked on his door expecting to find him sick or having some kind of breakdown. Instead, David answered with a confused smile, clearly fine and relaxed. Behind him, Lisa could see another person at his kitchen table, a woman with dark hair who was laughing at something David had just said. David looked surprised. "What are you doing here? Our session isn't until 8. "You weren't responding to my messages," Lisa said, trying to keep her voice professional even though her heart was racing. "I was concerned about your therapeutic progress when patients. In intensive treatment goes silent. It often indicates a crisis." The woman at the table looked up with interest. "Oh, are you David's therapist?" David hesitated. "This is Lisa. She's been helping me with some techniques for dealing with stress." "That's wonderful," the woman said, standing up and walking over. "I'm Rachel. I work with David at the hospital. He was just telling me how much better he's been sleeping lately." Lisa felt something cold settle in her stomach. David had been talking to this woman about their sessions, about personal details of his treatment. "David," Lisa said, her professional. Mask slipping slightly, "We need to discuss confidentiality protocols. Sharing details about your therapeutic process with unauthorized individuals can compromise your progress." Rachel looked confused. "I'm sorry, I didn't realize. David just mentioned he'd been doing some kind of therapy for sleep issues. I didn't know it was confidential." "All therapeutic relationships require strict privacy boundaries," Lisa said, though her voice was getting tighter. "David, we should talk about this privately?" David looked embarrassed. "Lisa, I just mentioned that I'd been sleeping better. I didn't share any details." "Any discussion of your treatment constitutes a breach of our therapeutic contract," Lisa said. "And having social contact during this critical phase of your healing could be very damaging." Rachel stepped back, sensing tension she didn't understand. "Maybe I should go. David, we can do dinner another time." "No," David said firmly. "Lisa, I think you're overreacting. Rachel and I were just having dinner. That's not going to hurt my sleep progress." Lisa felt panic rising in her chest. David was choosing this stranger over their therapeutic relationship. Over months of careful work they'd done together. "David, you're not thinking clearly. This is exactly the kind of therapeutic disruption I warned you about." "Therapeutic disruption?" Rachel asked. "David, what kind of therapy are you doing exactly?" David realized he didn't have a clear answer. We do these sessions where Lisa helps me relax. Physical comfort techniques for stress reduction." "Physical comfort." Rachel's voice carried a note of concern. "Are you seeing her in her office?" "No," David said slowly. "At her apartment. She has this comfortable setup there." Lisa watched Rachel's expression change and felt her professional world starting to crumble. "David receives intensive therapeutic support," she said quickly. "The treatment requires a controlled environment and consistent availability." "Lisa," Rachel said carefully, "are you a licensed therapist?" "Of course I'm licensed," Lisa snapped. "I have years of experience in trauma therapy. But is David officially your patient? Do you have a formal therapeutic relationship through a clinic? Or practice?" The question hung in the air like a bomb waiting to explode. David was looking at Lisa with growing realization. Lisa felt exposed in a way she hadn't experienced since her brother died. "Our therapeutic relationship is unconventional," Lisa said. "But the methods are scientifically sound." "Lisa," David said quietly, "are you actually my therapist? Or are we just two people who met in a support group?" The words hit Lisa like a physical blow. All the research, all the professional language, all the careful structure she'd built around their relationship suddenly felt like a house of cards collapsing. "I'm helping you," she said, her voice breaking. "We're barely functioning when we met, and now look at you. You're sleeping, you're calm, you're getting better. But you're not actually my therapist," David said. It wasn't a question. Lisa's composure completely shattered. "I can't sleep without our sessions," she whispered. "I can't function during the day when I don't know if you're coming over. I need this as much as you do." Rachel stepped closer to David, her concern now clearly focused on him. David, how long has this been going on? For months, David said, his voice hollow. For months of daily sessions. She has charts and research and timers. She made it all seem so professional. Because it is professional, Lisa said desperately. The techniques work. The research is real. Just because we met outside of a clinical setting doesn't mean the help isn't genuine. But you've been using your credentials to justify this whole thing, David said, understanding finally dawning. You've been telling me what's therapeutically necessary based on your professional training, but this was never actually therapy. Lisa felt like she was drowning. You needed help. I had the knowledge to help you. Does it matter where we met or how it started? It matters because you've been making decisions about my life based on what you told me was professional medical advice, David said. And now, I find out you need these sessions as much as I do. Rachel looked between them, clearly trying to understand the situation. Lisa, it sounds like you've been struggling too. Have you been getting help for yourself? I don't need help. Lisa said, I'm the one providing help. I'm the professional here, but you just said you can't sleep without these sessions, Rachel pointed out gently. That sounds like you might need support too. Lisa looked at David, desperate for him to understand. We help each other. That's what makes it work. You sleep better, I sleep better. You feel less anxious, I feel less anxious. It's mutual healing. But you've been controlling it, David said. You decide when we meet, how long we stay together, what's therapeutically appropriate. You've been using your professional authority to make all the decisions. Because I know what works, Lisa said. Because I have the training and the knowledge. David said firmly, you've been using your training to justify what you need, not what I need. Lisa felt something break inside her chest. Without their sessions, without the careful structure she'd built, without David's presence in her apartment every evening, she didn't know who she was or how to cope with the emptiness her brothers. Death had left behind. If you stop coming over, I don't know what I'll do, she said honestly. I know that's not professional to say, but it's the truth. Rachel looked at David with concern. I think maybe Lisa needs to talk to someone, a real therapist. David nodded slowly. Lisa, I care about you. I really do. But this isn't healthy for either of us. I need help that I can't provide. Lisa stood there in David's doorway, watching her carefully constructed world fall apart. She had been so convinced that she was helping him, that her professional knowledge made their relationship therapeutic rather than codependent. But now she could see that she had been helping herself first, using David to fill the hole in her life that grief had carved out. I don't want to lose this, she said quietly. You're not losing anything real, David said gently. But what we have isn't healthy for either of us. As Lisa walked back to her car, she realized that for the first time in months, she had no idea what she was going to do that evening. No session to prepare for, no one coming over to lie close to her, no research to justify her need for human contact. Just herself, alone with her grief, exactly where she'd started 4 months ago.